Spider-Man No Way Home is one of the greatest superhero stories ever told, and in my own opinion at least, one of the most surprisingly fantastic conclusions ever put to film. Regardless of its many flaws, its numerous missteps and shortcomings, No Way Home, at its very core, is a truly phenomenal story that acts as an absolutely beautiful conclusion to not just its own story, but an entire saga of stories. I was lucky enough to have not only grown up on every single Spider-Man film, but to have enjoyed them all too. My parents introduced me to the Sam Raimi trilogy when I was very young. I saw both of the Mark Webb films in theaters and was on the MCU bandwagon full swing when Homecoming and Far From Home released. Now, it probably goes without saying that even though I enjoyed all of these films as a kid, I, don't love all of them anymore, but the point is that I still carry a particular fondness for each film, and really care about the series and the character of Spider-Man as a whole. So when this movie was announced and all the leaks started pouring through about villains and heroes from previous films, I, along with a lot of other people, was stoked. Beyond stoked. I was so excited that in the month leading up to the film's release, I got together with my best friend and watched every single Spider-Man film up to that point. We were ready to go in with fully refreshed knowledge of the story, the characters, and just everything. It's worth noting, though, that my expectations for this film were not all positive. The film had to not only just be good, but also live up to the past two installments, continue the ongoing story in a satisfying way, and in a very bold decision, introduce and balance 5 significant villains from previous films, as well as 2 additional entire Spider-Men. That's a lot for a movie. Like, a lot. And in full honesty, I didn't really think the movie was going to be able to handle it. I kind of assumed it would end up being just fine. More of a big, fun, fan-servicey romp than a legitimately good film or story. And so that's how I went in, expecting a really good time, but nothing crazy special. Now, I can think of a lot of times in my life that I've been very happy to be wrong, and this ended up being one of them. No Way Home, to this day, stands as one of my favorite theater experiences. The first act is pretty much exactly what you expect going in, and then the second act mixes things up a bit and starts to get a lot more interesting. But my god, as soon as Act 2 concludes, the film just becomes everything I did not think it could achieve, and so much more. I left that theater legitimately baffled, deeply satisfied, filled with so many emotions, and with the thought that, at least in my eyes, the story of these 3 Spider-Men was at an end. And I really want to talk about that, and I'm going to in just a little bit. There's just one more thing I think should probably be mentioned about this movie first. So, usually, with these video essays I do, I spend a significant chunk of time talking about the cinematography, the sound design, the music, and whatever else. But honestly, I'm not really gonna do that with this film. Most everything about No Way Home, outside of its characters, acting, and core story, is honestly just kind of okay. Some of it is great, like the music, but otherwise it's either just completely fine or kinda bad. Now, to be fair, I do know this was a COVID movie, and Disney rushes production on almost everything they make, so I'm not really going to slam any of this stuff or anything, but I'm also not going to praise it much either. There are many things that explain or justify why this movie looks bad, but, at the end of the day, it still looks bad. The cinematography, save for a few cool exceptions, is very safe and standard. The lighting is really unconvincing. The sound effects are about the same as the rest of the MCU, and the CGI is, well, I guess I won't lie, it's really awful. But to not make this overly negative, all of No Way Home's subpar production actually stands as a massive testament to just how good the heart and soul of its narrative really is. Sure, it would have been awesome if this movie was an astounding, beautiful visual feast, but the fact that it's not, and that I literally don't care at all because of just how incredible the story is, says a lot. To me, this film is one of the best examples of how, at the end of the day, it's all about the story. Story is make or break, and can really carry an otherwise underwhelming production. It's like Marvel CEO Kathleen Kennedy always says,
Storytelling is always king. That's all that matters.
So, with all that now being said, let's talk about the story. And damn, that's gotta be record time for me. I just skipped over, like, everything I usually talk about. This movie starts with a bang. We pick up right where we left off in the last movie, with Peter having just had his identity revealed to the entire world. This problem and his attempts at fixing it encompass the entirety of the first act. This third of the movie is the only part that feels exclusively like a continuation of the Home trilogy, as the second act introduces the main villain from each of the previous Spider-Man films outside of this universe. Now, this middle section of the movie is awesome. It's an absolutely incredible ride and just tons of fun. However, I do think it's the best representation of what a lot of people think this movie is actually like. Throughout the second act, there are a lot of nods and wink-winks to the previous films, and it mostly does just feel like it's playing around with nostalgia, fan service, and cameos for the sake of it. It's also the strangest part of the movie tonally, as it continues using the lighthearted, carefree tone of the first act, the tone of the Home trilogy as a whole, but with characters who very distinctly do not belong or operate particularly well within that feel. And obviously you could say that's the point, which maybe it is, but what I'm trying to say is this middle section can feel a little jarring. And I think it warrants repeating, this film's second act, without the knowledge of the third, is what I feel people who dislike this movie see the whole package as. Which obviously isn't fair, and, I'm gonna talk about why. As soon as the second act nears its conclusion, Spider-Man No Way Home steps up in quality like a cleflillion steps. This scene here, where Peter senses Goblin, is one of the best in the movie, and after this happens, the story just keeps blazing forward at 110%. The entire condo fight is tense and brutal, and the death of Aunt May is shocking and, unexpectedly, pretty emotional. To take a real quick aside, I think this part of the movie is also where the acting is strongest. Everything from Alfred Molina is just brilliant, and Willem Dafoe is obviously indescribably stellar. But I think what's most impressive amidst all of this is Tom Holland's performance. And I'm saying this about every scene, but mostly, specifically, I'm saying it because of Aunt May's death scene. Tom's acting here is so ridiculously good that I honestly think I consider it the primary reason this whole moment hits so hard. I don't think too many people were or are super broken up about Aunt May's death, but it still manages to hit really, really hard because of the way Peter reacts to it. We're not really sad for Aunt May, but we're devastated for Peter. I think this moment is a really fantastic, concentrated example of what makes this film so special. It's able to do certain things so unfathomably well that it not only more than makes up for its shortcomings, but is able to pay things off that it was never really meant to pay off. Things that sometimes weren't even set up properly. I don't know, I just think that's kind of awesome. Anyway, right after this, we get some more really beautifully executed emotional scenes, and then Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man are brought into the film. And this time, it's just different. It's not like the introduction of the villains. The villains were introduced seemingly without any real narrative justification. They save that part for later, but the two Spider-Men are introduced with every narrative justification in the world. Tom Holland's Peter has just suffered an unimaginable loss, and he has no one to turn to in sharing his pain, his guilt, and his frustration. He has support, and he has love, but until the arrival of Tobey's Peter and Andrew's Peter, he doesn't have anyone who really, truly gets it. And now this is where I get to start talking about what actually makes this movie soar. From the moment that Tobey and Andrew, I'm just gonna call them that from here on out to make it easy, are introduced, No Way Home becomes almost entirely focused upon closure. Closure to not just this film, and not just this trilogy, but somehow, the entirety of the past 7 Spider-Man films. And everything in the movie just kind of feels like it shifts, in a way, to reflect this. Every setting up until this point either felt really fake, or like it was just kind of where the story was happening to take place. But then we get to Act 3, and we have the Spider-Man's introductory scene in this warm, cozy home, illuminated and colored in a rather striking and beautiful way. It's a momentary refuge from the intensity of everything that had just come before, and a breath of fresh air before the intensity of all that comes next. This scene just feels so homey and so safe, which is very appropriate for the two characters it introduces. And then there's the scene where the three Peters first meet, set against this deep blue sky with a mix of shadows and warm lights in all the right places. And then directly after it is the lab scene, a setting which we've only ever seen in broad daylight, bustling with students. But now it's dark out, and it's empty, and because of the current state of things in the story, it feels rather sad, which is obviously very appropriate, especially considering it's the last time we as an audience, and Peter, ever see this place. And throughout all of this, the character work is just incredible. Seeing Toby and Andrew bond over their favorite places to get away from the world, and hearing them recount their deepest losses is really powerful stuff, and it also serves to get us as an audience up to speed on how things have progressed in their lives. It's all beautifully written and beautifully acted, and expertly leads up to the grand finale, which is what ultimately just won me over completely. The big fight is awesome, the jokes are great, and just the reality of seeing all these characters on screen together is nothing short of epic. I mean, seriously, the immense raw excitement that some of these shots and some of these moments were able to create is just, wow. But while all of that is legitimately fantastic, it's really the way that each individual character, each individual story is wrapped up that makes it so special. Narratively, everything is now revolving around the idea of second chances, the idea of shared pain as a bond, and, of course, the idea of responsibility. The three Spider-Men in this final act to all three of their stories are given one massive shot at redeeming some of their worst mistakes. All the pain, the loss, and regret in each of their stories culminates to one grand battle against their greatest threats, against the primary antagonist of each of their films. But unlike every single other time they've fought these foes, it's not about beating them, it's about saving them. These Spider-Men have lost so much as a result of these 5 villains, and all actively hate at least one of them. But here they are, trying to save them, trying to give them a second chance, and in doing so are receiving their own second chance. Toby cures Sandman of the powers he never wanted to have, essentially saving the man who killed his uncle. And then Electro is saved, and he's able to talk face-to-face with Andrew, the man he was so jealous of, so hateful of. But more than just that, they are able to understand each other, to bond, and Max is given the reassurance he always needed, while also acknowledging his own failings. Then we get to see Doc Ock freed of his affliction, and he is able to reconnect with his student from so long ago, to see him, as he says, all grown up. And additionally, he seemingly finally gains access to the power of his dreams, and we know this time, he'll use it for good. Second to last of the villains to be cured, the Lizard gets to have a beautiful moment where he, is cured of being a lizard. Again. This one's not actually special or earned in any way, I guess. Unless the message is that he finally gets a real makeover.
Exactly.
After all the villains get their individual moments of closure, we get to then focus on the big 4, which is the 3 Peters and then Goblin. Andrew's moment of closure is the most obvious. He gets to save MJ from falling to her death, succeeding where he failed before, preventing the unthinkable from happening to Tom's Spider-Man. This scene, what it represents, and the reaction Andrew has are all just stellar. Now, Toby and Green Goblin's moments of closure are intertwined, and I absolutely love what the writers came up with here. This is, in my opinion, the most clever and earned moment of payoff out of all the legacy characters. Tom's Spider-Man is about to fully give in to his rage and outright murder Norman, a decision that may well send him down the same path as the others, the very thing he was warned against, and which we know would not only violate Aunt May's sacrifice, but violate what it means to be Spider-Man. Before he is able to carry out the deed, however, Toby jumps in front of the glider, and without needing to say a single word, he calms Tom down and shows him that this just isn't the answer. And so Tom is able to think clearly and cure Norman instead of killing him. And now, every villain has received their fitting ending. They've all not only been saved from their ailments, but have been able to come to some kind of emotional closure and be sent back to their homeworlds with a second chance at life. But what I really love about this particular scene goes deeper than just what I described. Tobey wasn't just saving Peter from killing Goblin, he was saving him from going down the exact same path that he and Andrew did. He was sparing him the guilt and regret he would never be able to truly escape. But again, there's more. Tobey was also receiving his own second chance at sparing Norman's life. Before, he dodged Norman's glider and allowed him to be impaled and die. But this time, he leaps directly in front of it, catches it, and seizes his second chance. But again, there's more. He was also passing on what his best friend, Harry Osborn, did for him. Leaping in front of the glider meant to kill, putting his own life on the line, and not just saving Tom's Peter, but his best friend's father, which Harry more than certainly would have wanted. But again, I'll say it, there's still more. This moment directly calls back to what Tobey said earlier. It ties back to the very beginning of what I think I can call this entire Spider-Man series. Tobey's journey as the first Spider-Man essentially began when he caused the death of the person he assumed to be his uncle's killer. It was his first great mistake, which marked his life forever, a mistake he could never take back. And now, here, with the latest Spider-Man, he is able to prevent that. He keeps Tom's Peter from going down the same path as him, from becoming him. And all of this awesome stuff takes place atop a massive recreation of Captain America's shield, which, of course, is where we were introduced to Tom's Spider-Man in the first place. Each of these characters receives second chances. They save their enemies and each other. They bond, they accept, they receive closure, and in many ways, they and their villains get the chance to begin again. All as the sun rises, a perfect visual metaphor. It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. So then we get to the ending, which gives us even more moments of closure. The Spider-Men embrace and say goodbye to each other. Everyone goes back to their original universes. Peter says goodbye to his loved ones. And what follows are not only my two favorite scenes of this film and of the entire superhero genre as a whole, but the two scenes that truly bring this narrative home, delivering fully on its grand promise. Firstly, this cafe scene, my personal favorite scene in the entire movie, is phenomenal. The winter setting and holiday vibe contrasted with the warm interior lighting of a setting already so familiar to us, visually, is just excellent. And the interaction between Peter and MJ is perfect. After everything that's happened throughout his entire trilogy as Spider-Man, everything he's seen and fought as an Avenger, and everything he's learned from the heroes and villains from other universes, now, after all of that, he has to make a decision. Does he walk back into the lives of his best friend and the love of his life, or does he make the impossibly hard, bitterly painful choice to leave them be, to let them be happy, to keep them out of harm's way for good? Nearly everything about this scene is communicated visually. There's really barely anything actually spoken. It's one of the most show-don't-tell moments of the entire series, and I think that was a spectacular decision. And the choice Peter ultimately makes is perfect. It's the most fitting place for his character to be, based upon everything he's been through and everything he's learned. He chooses to protect, to sacrifice, to put others before him, to use his great power responsibly. And with this choice, he is fully and completely alone. He enters an empty apartment. He tunes into the city's police chatter. He has trinkets from his loved ones scattered about his new home. He makes himself a brand new homemade suit. And then he swings off into the cold winter night, a completely and entirely forgotten person. A man who lost everything and consciously chose to keep it that way, for the good of everyone he knows and loves. At long last, he has truly and completely become Spider-Man. I don't have enough words to describe how much this entire ending means to me. It's so raw, so emotional, so bitterly satisfying, and such a perfect ending to not just this movie or this trilogy, but all 8 live-action Spider-Man films. I typically try to avoid addressing any additional movies or shows or whatever outside of the thing I'm specifically making a video to talk about, but I think it's warranted to break that rule here. I can say with full confidence that no matter what other films come out in the series in the future, I, personally, consider the franchise concluded right here with No Way Home. I'm sure that later entries will be great in their own right, but to me, the Spider-Man story ends here. It begins with Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man film and ends with No Way Home. I just have no clue how any other Spider-Man story with any connection to the Watts films, the Webb films, or the Raimi films could ever provide a more satisfying conclusion than this. Spider-Man No Way Home brought together the main villain from each past Spider-Man film, gave them a unique arc and an emotionally resonant conclusion. Spider-Man No Way Home brought together 3 generations of Spider-Man into one gripping, explosive, emotional narrative, and brought each of their stories beautiful and fitting closure. And on top of everything, at the core of it all, Tom Holland's Peter Parker never gets lost in the action. He's the heart of the film, the core of the story, and what it's really all about. His trilogy got to conclude with him learning from the mistakes and successes of those that walked the spider path before him, make the ultimate decision to sacrifice everything for the greater good, and ultimately become the great, true Spider-Man he was always meant to be. All that in one movie. I really don't want anything more from this series. It gave me everything I could have asked for, and I'll cherish that forever. I really truly don't know how any new ending later down the line could ever top this. Oh, and also, I can't just not mention the credits. Not only is this song choice the very definition of perfect, but the animated credits are a dazzling work of art. I will never stop loving how it feels to watch this final swing, to feel that strong swell of bittersweet emotions, and then right as the screen goes black, hear this. To whoever picked this song, conceptualized these credits, and to whoever animated them, you crushed it. You absolutely crushed it. So, as I mentioned before, I went into this movie not expecting all that much. I expected an excess of blatant fan service, a stupidly messy plot, wildly misplaced humor, and to leave the theater thinking to myself, yeah, it was fun, but nothing amazing. I hope by this point I've clearly illustrated why the exact opposite happened. It didn't just show me my childhood again, it didn't just dress it up in the modern appearance of superhero movie making, but rather it genuinely dug deep. It pulled at the deepest, most impactful parts of all the stories it was born from, and then honors them. It pays tribute to the work that came before it. It complements the characters that came before it. It revels in the foundation that was built for it to run upon. No Way Home, for myself and many others, took the Spider-Man stories of our childhood and did right by them. It took hold of nostalgia and very intentionally, very carefully, weaved real closure out of it. And that's rare. That's special. And so, for all the reasons I've been talking about this whole time, I pretty clearly, absolutely fell in love with this movie. Not for its fan service, not for its action scenes or its humor, and not for its special effects, references, or whatever else, but for its story. Despite all of its flaws, Spider-Man No Way Home remains a towering example of what a truly powerful narrative can overcome and accomplish.